Hello there, YouTube. Today I'm going to be talking about morality in role-playing, or as it's more commonly called, alignment. Of course, in D&D you have your lawful evil and chaotic good and true neutral and all that other shit. And when I first started role-playing, mind you, I was much younger and wasn't even a teenager yet, so my mind forming the concepts of morality and trying to sort it into what the 9 different alignments was. It took a while for me to wrap my head around it, and I've never really liked the way D&D does alignment and morality. And when I started playing Gurps, I found that its system of good and evil or right and wrong morality makes a lot more sense than just these codefined alignments that you just can't break from, and once you break from it, if you're a cleric, you've got serious problems to worry about, or any other divine spellcaster. The paladin, you no longer can ever become a paladin ever again if you break alignment. And the way Gurps does it is it works it into its system of advantages and disadvantages, and for the most part, in fact, I can't think of very little advantages to being truly good or truly evil. So let's start with the fun one, which is evil. There are different levels of right and wrong and good and evil. The pickpocket or the thief does not necessarily rate on the scale of evilness as, say, Charles Manson. But they both end up in jail, so we're going to assume for argument's sake, they're both evil or bad people. And Gurps has several different disadvantages that rate different evil aspects rather than just an evil intended character. Sadist, bloodlust, murder compulsion is a big one. Kleptomania is a disadvantage. Bully, being callous rather than being purely a sadist, or having murder compulsion, and selfish, just to name a few of the disadvantages that, looking through the books, I would consider evil or negative personality traits. And it may make it kind of a little overwhelming for somebody new to the system and unfamiliar with the system to be that involved. But to the player that's familiar with the system and wants to get the most out of it, it gives them a lot of leeway with what they can do with their character, and what they can choose to get points for that they're already going to be role-playing. Well, for example, murder compulsion. When are you going to need that? In a not-so-serious campaign, I made Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, and that was his one big disadvantage, is he has a murder compulsion. So I want to say I got like 60 points back for that, and just dumped it all right into his strength, which he doesn't need a lot of skills. He's an undead murdering dickhead, so I figured, I think he had maybe 10 skills, but I took the murder compulsion, jacked up his strength, I think it jacked up his health, gave him a few more hit points, and took a few levels of hard to kill, and I think I made a pretty solid character. And what my point of that analogy is even though evil is a disadvantage, people react to you negatively, you're not going to make a lot of friends having a murder compulsion. You can go to jail, obviously. Kleptomania, you're not nearly as severe, and it's not worth nearly as many points, but you can still go to jail, or even in a more harsh criminal justice system, you could lose a hand or an eye or be branded or something like that. So there is definite disadvantages to being evil, and the advantage you get from playing an evil character is your own personal enjoyment, and that's a character. That's a player thing. That's not a character thing. But you can still use that character concept to your advantage, and using the points as I did to give them higher strength, give them more health, make them harder to kill. I took I think he might have been 150 points, and I basically got him up to about 210 points by having that one disadvantage. And I feel it's best to offset your disadvantages by increasing stats and having certain skills, depending on what your character concept is, to make a solid character. Yes, you might be weak in one area, but you want to make a balanced enough and a rounded enough character that they at least have one or two options to work around their disadvantage. And that's how most people normally function, because Gurps is intended to be based on a more realistic system as opposed to a class developing system. Of course, somebody might be a doctor and maybe at home they're good with cooking, and maybe occasionally they do the occasional crafts project, and they know some carpentry, but God forbid they have to work on their car, change their oil, and that's normal, and that just means they haven't spent those points there, or maybe they even have a disadvantage, fear of machines or something like that, and that can be worked into a character concept. Now, good, on the other hand, is still going to be a bunch of disadvantages as well. Just glancing through the book, I wrote down Code of Honor, honesty, which is not the same as truthfulness, which is another disadvantage. Charitable and pacifism are all what I would consider good-oriented advantages, and obviously some like pacifism are not going to be for everybody, so you can tailor your level of good or evil to how deep you want to role play it. The difference between honesty and truthfulness, truthfulness, you're bad at telling a lie. Honesty means you always want to follow the laws, even though no one might be looking, or you might even be in an area where your laws don't apply, or no laws even apply, but you still follow those rules. Code of Honor is probably the most ambiguous, but also the most direct way to make a good character, because there's a lot of different directions you can go. The book gives examples of, well, in various books, there's the Japanese code of Bushido, the code of chivalry, a soldier's code of honor, never leave a fallen comrade, obey orders, that sort of thing, or a gentleman's code of honor, where you avenge an insult and throw your cloak on the ground so a lady doesn't have to step in a puddle, that kind of thing. And the nice thing about a code of honor is you can personally define it, and you can have anywhere from 5 to 15, or if it's really hampering and your GM is working with you on it, you might be able to get more points out of it, but that's a player GM thing that's not defined necessarily in the rules. But since it's GURPS, the GM is the final arbitrator on that, and if all participants feel it's appropriate, that it might be a 20-point code of honor, then yes, you could get a significant amount of points back. But even the simplest code of honor, like a soldier's code of honor, might only be 5 points. You're most likely going to follow orders and not leave your friends behind. But the reason the code of honor is a disadvantage is it could put you in harm's way. As a soldier, you're already going to be in harm's way. So taking 3 rounds to pull the guy out of the trench and drag him back to safety as opposed to shoot your gun more or whatever. Um, that is why that would be a disadvantage, but not as high points as, say, Bushido, where you're willing to, you might be asked to commit ritual suicide if you've dishonored your lord significantly enough. But having a code of honor lets you define it as, if you're not using a historically based code of honor, like I said, chivalry and Bushido are probably the two most familiar ones that people would recognize. But if you're working in a fantasy setting, and maybe you're, I don't know, some well-trained elven archer or something like that, and you take a code of honor that, you know, might be similar to a knight's code of honor, but it could also be focused more on protecting the forest and defending the trees and the animals as opposed to people. So you'd want to define that, so that way at the end of the gaming session, the GM can say, wow, you role-played that, and as I've mentioned before, in Gurps you get experience for good role-playing, not killing things and killing more things. So you continue to role play that, and you get to define it in a way that feels best suited for your character. So the experience you get, character experience you get, and the way you choose to play your character are shaped into that. And with both good and evil, you can have varying range of how good or how evil you want to be, and that kind of brings me to the one ambiguous thing about morality in Gurps, is there's no disadvantage or advantage to being neutral. There's no, most people aren't truly neutral, which is a very difficult thing to achieve. But to the best of my knowledge, there really isn't any advantages or disadvantages that would create a truly neutral character. So in that sense, you just don't take advantages either way, and you never have to play either extreme. You can stay in the middle and stay balanced. And there is one disadvantage that as looking through it, I came across, and actually applies to both good and evil, and that's fanaticism. Fanaticism is, I believe, a 15-point disadvantage in 3rd edition, anyway. And there's no real reason why you couldn't be fanatical about being good, like a knight could be have his code of chivalry and be fanatical about it, or fanatically loyal to his lord, or however the player and the character is best interpreted. Or you could work for High Duke Jackass, who likes to impale people on stakes, and you could be fanatical about impaling motherfuckers on stakes. So their fanaticism will amplify your already chosen good or evil disadvantages. So you can easily get around not having a system of alignment, and from my experience, I've found it's much more suited to how the player wants to interpret their character. And if, like myself, if you're the type of GM that doesn't look over the shoulder of players, but likes to be at least up to date on what their character concept and what their goals are, so you can reward them with experience, and not just reward them with experience, but work their character concept and their goals into the role-playing game. I've found that the Gurp system, as opposed to a strictly defined alignment system, Gurps tends to be a lot more flexible and a lot more character tailored. I think that's all I've got to ramble on about this one. Leave your comments below. Thanks for watching.